The children just called him Janitor Uncle. For 15 years, he cleaned the same school, never complaining, until the principal got sick and visited his home, seeing the display cases in his living room. Those medals told the story of who he really was. Welcome to Story Factory. Before we begin this powerful story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, don't forget to subscribe. Because sometimes, the greatest heroes hide in the most ordinary jobs. Franklin Elementary's corridors began being cleaned every morning at 6:30 a.m. When Robert arrived with his mop bucket, the school hadn't yet awakened. Only the security guard was in his booth by the door, drinking tea and reading the morning paper. For everyone else, the day hadn't started yet. But for Robert, the day had long begun. He was 58 years old. His hair had turned silver. He walked slowly but purposefully, cleaning every corner with the same attention. He limped slightly on his left leg, an old injury that no one knew about. He had worked at this school for 15 years. When he arrived, the children here were now high school graduates. Some of their children now attended this school. Robert knew them all, but hardly anyone really knew him. "Good morning, Uncle Robert," the running children would say as they passed. "Good morning, kids," Robert would reply. His voice was warm but distant. The children didn't chat much with him. Neither did the teachers. To everyone, he was just Janitor Uncle Robert. The school principal, Mrs. Thompson, was respectful toward Robert. For 15 years, he had never caused problems, always did his job properly, never been late. But even Mrs. Thompson didn't know much about Robert's personal life. Actually, Robert had no personal life. He would come early in the morning and leave quietly after his work finished in the afternoon. He lived alone. He had no friends. This school was his only life, the same order every morning. First, Robert would clean the main corridor. Then, he would go through the classrooms one by one. Before the teachers arrived, he would have everything ready. Clean blackboards, organized desks, empty trash cans. When children started arriving at 8:30 a.m., Robert would make himself invisible. He would retreat to the supply room, organize materials there, or collect leaves in the schoolyard. But his ear was always on the children. "Tommy, run, you're going to be late." "Emma, did you get your homework?" "David, don't make noise in class this time." These voices made Robert happy. For 15 years, the same voices from different children. Life continued, and he was a silent part of this life. When lunch break came, the children would play. Robert would watch from afar. Sometimes children would fall, and Robert would immediately run over to clean small wounds. The children trusted him. "Uncle Robert, my knee is bleeding," they would say. "Come here, let me see, my child," Robert would say. He always had a small first aid kit with him. He would clean the wound, put on a Band-Aid, and comfort the child. "Why do you always have medicine with you?" little Sarah had asked once. Robert had stopped. He didn't know how to answer this question. Because I don't want anything to happen to you," he had said. Mrs. Thompson had been the principal of this school for 5 years. She didn't talk much with Robert, but she liked to observe him. She noticed things about Robert that were different from normal janitors. First, his relationship with children. Robert was very patient and protective toward children, as if he saw them as his own children. Second, his behavior in emergencies. Last year, little Michael had broken his nose. The teachers had panicked, but Robert was so calm and professional, as if he had encountered such situations many times before. Third, his physical condition. Despite being 58 years old, he didn't struggle when lifting heavy things, and even when walking in the corridors, he had a military posture. Mrs. Thompson noted these details, but had no questions. Robert did his job and caused no problems. That was enough. That Wednesday morning, Mrs. Thompson woke up with fever. She had the flu. It was clear she couldn't go to school. She called Assistant Principal Mr. Davis. "James, I can't come today. You can handle it." "Of course, Margaret. Take care of yourself. Focus on getting better." Mrs. Thompson rested at home all day. By evening, she felt a little better, but she was still weak. When there was a knock at the door, it was 7 o'clock p.m. Who could it be? When she opened the door, she was surprised to see Robert. "Robert, how do you know my address?" Robert had a small soup bowl in his hand. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson. I asked for your address from the secretary. I heard you were sick. I brought you homemade chicken soup." Mrs. Thompson was very surprised. Robert had never acted like this before. "You're very kind, Robert. Come in." Robert hesitated. "I don't want to disturb you." "Nonsense, come in." Mrs. Thompson invited Robert into the living room. While Robert looked around, Mrs. Thompson went to the kitchen to heat the soup. The living room had a warm and cozy decoration, but what caught Robert's attention was the display cabinet on the wall. It was filled with photos, books, and small souvenirs, but the top shelf of the cabinet was completely different. There were medals there, many medals. Robert stood up to look closer. He could feel his heart racing. Bronze Star Medal, Purple Heart, Army Commendation Medal, Combat Action Badge, and most importantly, displayed on the chest, Medal of Honor. Medal of Honor. America's highest military honor medal. Robert's hand began to tremble. This medal was only given to soldiers who showed extraordinary heroism. When Mrs. Thompson returned from the kitchen, Robert was standing frozen in front of the cabinet. "Robert, are you okay?" Robert turned. His face was white. "Mrs. Thompson, these medals." Mrs. Thompson smiled. "My father's. He fought in the Korean War. He received the Medal of Honor. I'm very proud of him." "Your father, what did he do?" "In 1952 in Korea. His unit was under siege. My father crossed enemy lines alone and rescued his wounded comrades. He saved 23 soldiers' lives. He was also severely wounded himself." Robert's eyes filled with tears. "He was a hero." "Yes, but he never boasted about it. After the war, he never talked about those days. He would just say, 'It was my duty.'" Robert couldn't stand in front of the cabinet any longer. He sat down, but his hands were shaking. "Robert, are you okay? You look very pale." "I'm fine. Just, your father's story is very moving." Mrs. Thompson looked at Robert carefully. "Did you do military service, Robert?" There was a long silence. Robert's heart was beating very fast. For 15 years, no one had asked him this question. "Yes," he said very quietly. "In Vietnam." "When?" 1968 to 1970. Mrs. Thompson sat down. "Those were difficult times. How was it?" Robert bowed his head. "I don't like talking about those days." "I understand. My father was the same way. It must have been traumatic." Robert just nodded. Mrs. Thompson brought the soup. The two sat quietly. Mrs. Thompson noticed that something had changed in Robert's behavior. "Robert, if you want to talk, I'm ready to listen." Robert looked at her. For 15 years, no one had treated him this way. No one had been curious about his story. "Mrs. Thompson, if I tell you something, would you share it with others?" "Of course not, Robert. It stays between us." Robert took a deep breath. After 15 years, he began to tell his story for the first time. "In Vietnam, I was in the medical rescue team. I was a medic. My job was to save the wounded." Mrs. Thompson listened carefully. In 1969, during the Tet Offensive, our unit fell into an ambush. We were in a very bad situation. 12 soldiers were wounded. They were in mortal danger. Robert's voice began to tremble. Bullets were coming from everywhere. No one could go outside. But I couldn't leave those wounded soldiers. I carried each one to the safe zone one by one. It took 3 hours. You saved 12 people? Yes. But I was wounded too. I was shot in the left leg. That's why I limp. Mrs. Thompson's breath caught. Robert, you're a hero. No, Robert said quickly. I just did my duty. But of the 12 soldiers I saved that day, 8 died for various reasons after returning to the country. Suicide, alcohol, drugs. The war had destroyed them from the inside. Mrs. Thompson now understood the complete story of Robert. You were affected too, weren't you? For 15 years I blamed myself. I thought, why did I save them? Maybe if they had died, they would have suffered less. Robert, that's why I decided to live quietly. No one would know my past. But children, when I see children, I feel hope for the future. I want to protect them. Mrs. Thompson approached Robert. Robert, you're a real hero. You saved those 12 soldiers. Their later lives are not your fault. But, no buts. You saved lives. And now here, you're protecting our children. Every day you provide them with a safe environment. Robert wiped his eyes. For 15 years, no one had talked to me like this. Because they didn't know your story. But I know now. And I'm very proud of you. Please don't tell anyone. Why? Because I want to leave it in the past. This school is my new life. Mrs. Thompson thought, okay, Robert, but know that you're a very valuable part of our school family. Not just a janitor, but our protector. When Mrs. Thompson returned to school the next day, her view of Robert had completely changed. As she walked through the corridors, she watched him. In every movement, every behavior, she now saw different things. When Robert talked to children, she understood that he wasn't just kind, but also protective. When little Sarah fell, Robert's first aid skills came from his military training. During lunch break, Mrs. Thompson talked to Robert. Robert, I thought a lot last night. About what? These children at school don't know how lucky they are. They have a real hero with them. Robert shook his head. Mrs. Thompson, please. I'm going to make a proposal. There's a Veterans Day event on Sunday. You don't have to give details to anyone, but maybe the children could get to know you better. Robert hesitated. I don't know. Just think about it. You've been serving them for 15 years. Maybe they have the right to know you. When Veterans Day came, a small ceremony was organized in the school gymnasium. Children, their families, and teachers had gathered. Mrs. Thompson took the stage. Today, we have a special guest here, someone who has served our school for 15 years, Uncle Robert, whom you all know. The children were surprised. Was Janitor Uncle going to come on stage? When Robert came on stage, he looked very nervous. He took the microphone. Hello, children. I served in the Vietnam War. Those were very difficult days, but the most important thing I learned was how precious life was. The hall was silent. Everyone was listening carefully. For 15 years, I've been cleaning around you, but actually, you cleaned me. You reminded me of the meaning of life. The reason I come here every morning is to see you, to ensure your safety. Little Sarah stood up. Uncle Robert, are you a hero? Robert smiled. No, Sarah. The real heroes are you, because you will build the future. The hall filled with applause. From that day on, Robert was no longer just janitor uncle. He was the school's guardian angel. Children began to look at him differently. Teachers treated him with more respect. But most importantly, Robert made peace with himself. The guilt he had carried for 15 years was replaced by pride. He had saved lives, both in Vietnam and here, at this school. The medals in Mrs. Thompson's home had taught Robert something. Heroism wasn't just on the battlefield. Sometimes it was hidden in school corridors, ensuring children's safety. And when Robert shared his story, he realized it was time to make peace with the past. Because real heroes were those who kept their stories hidden. Thank you for watching this powerful story from Story Factory. If you believe stories like this deserve to be heard more, don't forget to subscribe and share your comments. Because there's a Robert in every school, and their stories deserve to be told. As Story Factory, we will continue to be the voice of silent heroes. See you in the next story.